you think there's a slight or a change in the mentality that in international, certainly England cricket, that is sort of finding its way through to county level? I know Middlesex lost a game recently where at a chase somebody got like 140 off 70 balls. So do you think that kind of nothing's impossible mentality is kind of finding its way from the top through the system in a way?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a little bit of, we've seen what's possible from the England side, and obviously they're extremely skillful players, but that mindset of not fearing a chase and going out and expressing yourself. So there's definitely that element. This has probably been the summer to cash in from previous summers. This has been a year where pitches and balls have suited batters more than it has done for a long time. So I think that's aided in batters having a lot more confidence as well, and then the England team going out and playing.
There's still been a lot of results though.
As well.
It hasn't just meant a procession of draws. I mean, one of the stats which fascinated me actually was there in that top 10 there was only one game that ended in a draw. All the other innings, including your own, of course, led to a win. It was only Brian Lara's that ended in a draw, and that was back in the days when Warwickshire was an absolute road, wasn't it?
Yeah, right, absolutely.
So, have you by any chance had a chance to have a look at any of the interesting stories around some of your other top 10 club members? Because there's some really crazy ones in there.
Not particularly. I mean, I know that I'm not even the highest scorer from my school. So somebody who school teacher from Harrow told me that Archie McLaren went to Harrow, and you're still behind him. So I was like, I thought I might have been the top run scorer from Harrow, but even that wasn't possible to achieve. But apart from that, not really. No.
Well, did he make 100 at Lords for Harrow though? Got to remember that. You probably got that one over on him. Well, no, I don't know that. Well, I just for fun, I wasn't going to give you three just to see if you did know him. Brian Lara, of course, was famously dropped before he got to 100 by poor old Chris Scott, who then famously said, "I'll bet he goes on and gets 100 now." He was also bowled off a no ball when he was on about 12. BB Nimbulka, who was chasing Bradsman's record, got stalled on 443 because the opposing captain, His Highness the Thakur Sahiba Rajkot, got so bored of watching him bat that he took his team home and forfeited the game. which I thought was, whoa, that's just nuts. And Hanif Mohammed was on 499. He got himself run out because there was a dodgy scoreboard, and he went for a single he thought he had to take when near the end of the day, when he didn't actually have to take it because the scoreboard was wrong. So such is the craziness of history and the weird things that can happen. How did you go and celebrate?
Just a sort of a friend's barbecue in Hampshire that evening, which was sort of already planned, and then went home and sort of saw the family and saw my parents next day. Went out for a bit of lunch, and that was about it, really. I mean, it's definitely not like the England players' rock star lifestyle, and Elvis Presley. But so no, it was very, very tame, to be honest.
Well, but with the family, and if your dad had sat there through every ball, not wanting to come to the ground, I'd say you were probably in the right place. Now, to quote Rudyard Kipling, if you can meet triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same, yesterday was perhaps, I won't call it a disaster, but it was a bit of a down-to-earth moment, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, we went even the next game after. We played Wales national county in a 50 over sort of warm-up game for the comp, and then got to run out backing out, and then obviously getting a first baller yesterday. So the cricket's like that, isn't it? It is. There's ups and downs throughout the whole season, and you always go back to the nice moments throughout a season. But so yeah, it's definitely sort of back to earth, and now we'll look to go again the next game and try and get some runs. But trying to live back up to 400 is probably going to be a tough ask.
Well, you never know. Do you think as you've kind of gone through your career, do you feel that as a batsman, you kind of as you progress, you feel you sort of more easily adapt or kind of cope with the dramatic difference of some of the highs and lows? Does it hit you less somehow as you kind of build up that body of experience?
I think so. Yeah, I think you definitely you're more constant. You're more level. I mean, there's definitely nothing. There is always, even Colin Ingram yesterday. He got 150. It was his best list day. He came in and he was utterly annoyed with himself. And there's no dismissal in cricket where you don't walk off and think, "What was that?" And you want more. You always want more. And that's what keeps you coming back, and it keeps you working hard. But I think it's inevitable that as you get older, you ride the highs and lows a bit better, and you stay in a bit of a constant. And you repeat, and sort of your training is a lot more consistent, I would say.
Well, they do say it's a mental game, but that's people probably don't play it and haven't had a ball whistling past their ears at 95 miles an hour. Now you were and still are, a real all-round sportsman, aren't you? I mean, it's football, squash, rackets, rugby, athletics. Oh goodness me, you've excelled in a few things. What was it, or why did cricket, become the game you sort of mainly focused upon?
I think, to be honest, it was always the standout, even as a youngster. But I've always enjoyed. I made sure at school that I was always going to play everything because I loved the comparison. This is the different sports and what it sort of could bring. I just loved it, and I loved playing every single one of them. But cricket was always a huge standout. But I never wanted to sort of do it 24/7. I wasn't desperate to get back into the winter nets. I was more wanted to go and play football, squash, and rugby, and make sure that I played all those sports until for as long as I could. Even the fact of being in an academy from sort of 13 at Kent, they were very understanding that to play everything else and become an athlete and develop other sort of skills. And have an all-round skill set was hugely important. I think that's definitely benefited me. But cricket, always loved it. And it was a bit of a standout, to be honest. Right. But I wasn't somebody who was like in the nets 24/7. I was, and even now I like to get away and play other sports in the winter and play squash and get away from cricket at times.
I was got a question about that towards the end, really, about where and how you spend your time. Now, you went to Harrow on a sports scholarship, didn't you? You became the youngest to play in the Eton Harrow match at Lord's for 60 years, and you scored a ton. Can you remember much about that day?
I remember my first time at Lord's and being young, and I remember I was a bit rabbit in headlights when I went out to bat. It was like the first time being to 14 years old and coming out in front of a crowd and just being a bit frantic, like hitting the ball straight to point and trying to run and stuff like that. And I was a bit, it was a pretty huge eye opener at that age. But then, it was a nice experience to have. And in terms of the pressure of going on to first class cricket, was actually quite a good one. Having the pressure of playing in front of a sort of a raucous crowd from a young age.
How old were you at that? 15, 16? How old were you when you played in that game?
Yeah, 14 to start
14.
With. Yeah,
so you've achieved
14.
Something at 14 that most people would never in their whole life have achieved, and you ticked it off your list when you were 14 years old. 100 at Lord's.
Well, I played 14, and then I got 100 when I was in my second last year.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would have been 17 at that stage. So
still,
but yeah, every year it became easier, and I'm playing at Harrow. Fantastic school, fantastic abilities, fantastic coaches. So it was a really good place to play cricket and to learn.
We had 10 years at Kent. So 2007, I think, to 17, became captain in 2016. What stands out most for you during that 10 years with Kent?
Well, to be honest, I mean, that's what they formed me into the sort of the player sort of I am today. In a lot of ways, a lot of the learning and the education came from great coaches, which I had, from Paul Farbrae, Simon Willis, Jimmy Adams, Graham Ford, I'm sure I'm missing a few who have helped me along the way. I mean, they were huge, and Rob Key, Darren Stevens in the change room, Brian Jones, fantastic players, and learned, everything really, a lot of my career. And obviously the club which supported growing up, meant everything to play for Kent. And fantastic club, and it was a great time. Enjoyed my time at Kent, and it was an honour to play there, and and absolutely formed me into the player I am today.
Well, they won. I think they won the Division 2 Championship while they were there. The runners-up in 2016, runners-up in the One Day Cup, as I recall. You were made captain, of course. Did that sort of feel like a mantle you'd always been waiting to wear, or was that sort of a shock when that came about?
It wasn't necessarily a shock. I mean, I was vice captain under Kesey and was sort of learning the trade as I was going along. And it came as a shock because Kesey sort of gave it up at the beginning of one season, which was sort of earlier than expected. And so I took it on, I guess, probably a season or two too early in some ways. I still had a lot of learning to do. But yes, it was always going to be something I wanted to sort of achieve in my career at Kent, but probably came earlier than expected.
And then you left. Weren't they trying to tie you to a longer contract and making the captaincy a bit conditional upon it? Was it? It was certainly big news when you left. Was it really a point of principle for you in the end?
There was a lot of things tying it down. I mean, it was more just the ambition of where the club was going and wanted to see, and where I wanted to go with my career, and trying to sort of get the two to align together, really. And in the end, we didn't end up agreeing on that. And was allowed to leave, and then Hampshire came in and talked to Rod and to Giles White, and it all happened quite quickly. And
yeah, well, and success. It wasn't immediate, but it certainly followed. You got you won a Royal London Cup win, I think, against Kent at Lord's, 75 not out for you. But I don't think the Kent fans took too kindly to that. Wasn't that a bit of a bittersweet day out for you?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. It was, I mean, the first time facing Kent, and it had to be in the Lord's final. I mean, of all the times, and the years before, we kept getting to the quarterfinals and semi-finals without getting to finals. When I was at Kent, and they managed to do that the year I left, and then to face them back, it was probably not the ideal time and scenario, but it was one of those days, and it's tough in a lot of ways, playing against friends you just left and competing against them in the final. Probably not the way you wanted to win the first trophy.
It's the striker in football, isn't it? You just know if he's playing against your team, when he used to play for your team and he's now playing for someone else, you just know he's going to score. It's the law of the X. It kind of always happens. But a couple of loans, I think Yorkshire and Notts, and then on to Glamorgan. So let's circle back there. Things seem to be going really, really well for you there. Are you feeling pretty settled now in Glamorgan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when we had discussions around probably this time last summer, it seemed like an automatic fit with the way Matt and Wally wanted to take the team forward and how I'd fit in, and it felt like the perfect fit in a lot of ways. So, and for that to be the case has been great, and it's felt like home very quickly, which is fantastic. And feel like I'm getting back to playing the sort of type of cricket which I know I can do.
Well, you're currently averaging, I think, 75 from 19 innings in the Championship. obviously 410 with a not out against it is going to help, but that's pretty decent going. And you had a ton just before that 410, didn't you? So clearly you'd been sort of building up to something special. So when you're not making runs, what do you do to relax and have fun that you can tell me about?
Well, at the moment, there's fun is a different way of sort of describing it. But I'm looking after my little daughter, more times than not at the moment. When I get home, that's enjoyable, and lack of sleep is definitely the case. So I mean, at the moment, it's going from Cardiff to Canterbury, which is with quite a bit, which has been tough. But it's nice to get home after 4 days. So that's more normally the case. But as I said, just to get away. I mean, I love still playing sort of all sports really, and so in the winters I try. I'm not really a golfer, and definitely summers are it's full on cricket. A lot of time spent in coffee shops and stuff like that, as cricketers normally do. Loads of box sets as you go around the county grounds. But in the winter, it's I love playing squash, rackets, and play a bit of football. So that's definitely where I still love playing all sports as best I can.
Well, I'm going to ask you to wind the clock forward to close a little bit. If you go forward, let's say 3 years, and you're looking back 3 years from now, what does success from here look like? What to have got everything you want? If you look back on those last 3 years, what will you be thinking success was?
To be honest, when I signed for Glamorgan, it was all about leaving a legacy of some description there. So if however long I have at Glamorgan, and if Glamorgan can take a big, huge leap, forward and be a big standout in Div 1 and win some trophies and really have a period of time where we're successful, that would be brilliant for me. When you start scoring runs, you start thinking of higher honours and stuff like that, and playing in the 100 and stuff like that. Trying to see how far I can go up the sort of the chain, the ladder, as it were. I'd always love to play for England. Of course I would. Yeah, I'm not going to say that otherwise. But I think I need to just keep that realistic and just concentrate on the sort of the here and now at Glamorgan. I'm loving my time, and even enjoying the fact that we're starting another new competition, and we started 2 from 2 in the 50
over. In the Royal London, yeah, you did.
And the Royal London, yeah, and some really good performances in that from Colin, Tom Cullen yesterday. So there's a group of players there which we can achieve something, I think, and that would be great to finish off, with some more trophies in the cabinet. I think to finish the career back and say I could won this and that, and but there's no numbers, there's no figures which I'd like to finish on or anything like that. It's just try and live in the here and now and see where we get to, and hopefully Glamorgan are in a better place.
They're third in the championship, chasing Middlesex. The only difference is I look at Middlesex's record and it's draws and losses, whereas I think you've thrown a couple of wins in there. So I think it's 3 of the last 5. So there's a bit of momentum for Glamorgan at the moment, which obviously you've been a huge part of.
Yeah, well, promote. Yeah, I mean, there's that game at Lords. Maybe if we can get you, telling people good luck before they go out on 97.
Oh well, no, I don't do that. That is an absolute principle now for Middlesex. I never ever wish anyone good luck anymore.
No, absolutely. Don't wish anyone good luck. It's a terrible thing to do.
I'm the kiss of death for batsmen in their 90s. Sam, thank you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Congratulations again. That is some club you've joined, and I hope everything you want, you're wishing for, does come true in those 3 years. But you're still in that club. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you. Cheers.